and it was also fun to see some of the pros, one in the men's race, one in the women's race. The pros ran with their helmets on, which you see oftentimes with the Chicago Tri, some beginners who forget they have their bike helmet on. In this case, I think one of the females had accidentally had the helmet strap get stuck on her hair when she was trying to transition, and so she just decided to run with her helmet on.
All right. Hello and welcome everyone to another episode of Tri312 Multisport Monthly, where we talk everything triathlon and multisport in and around the greater Chicagoland area. We are your hosts, Coach Brian.
Chris.
All right. So Chicago, let's talk triathlon news. So in the world of endurance sports, we just had several major endurance sporting events. And today we want to start with somewhere, I don't know if you can tell by what Coach Chris is wearing, but he is vomiting everything IRONMAN World Championship out in Kona, Hawaii. So Chris was there, and we're going to ask him just to kind of tell us a little bit about his experience and how that went. So Coach Chris, how was Kona?
It was fun. I wish I didn't have to be back here in Chicago. Our goal is to retire Kona, Hawaii. But yeah, it's for anyone who's never been there. It's a tropical environment, and it's pretty much consistent all year round. But for racing, it is tough. The heat and humidity is no joke. But for swimming, it's literally still my favorite place in the world to go open water swimming. There's just crystal clear waters. As soon as you get in the water, it's like being in a fish tank. You can see fish everywhere. There's turtles, there's dolphins. It's just an epic swim location. But yeah, we had several athletes from Chicago racing it, including several that were doing it as legacy athletes, meaning they've done 12 plus full Ironman races and earned their way into racing Kona at least once. So we had a fun experience following them, cheering them on, doing some final training workouts with them. We also were out there watching the pros. So I was doing some media stuff out there as well, doing some recording. We got a good run form analysis of some of the top pros that we're hoping to turn into a future video that we'll delve into. But yeah, it was a blast. The weather was pretty brutal, but this was actually the latest in the year they've had the Kona, the Ironman World Championships. Normally it's in early October. This year it was pretty much late October. So the weather was actually pretty good. The pros, they got a good amount of heat, but not a lot of wind. The age groupers got a lot of wind, but then they got it rained. So they got cooled down on the run, which helped, I think, for some of the age groupers to post some good run times.
Nice.
But yeah, it was an epic day. I just feel like it's a whirlwind. Everybody in triathlon is there. All the brands, all the pros. So it was fun.
Nice. How many times have you been?
It's a good question. At least 3 or 4 times, I think. I've raced it. We've gone to spectate and cheer on at least two years of our athletes, maybe 3 times for the actual race. And yeah, it's a lot of fun. If I could go back every year, I would, but it is very expensive. So probably not in the cards every year, but maybe every couple of years. So I think that's our long-term goal for our Tri312 crew, is to see if we can actually record with all 3 of us in Hawaii. That'll be our retirement goal, is to retire there doing Tri312. But yeah, we have actually one of our local athletes from the Chicago Tri Club, which we'll be featuring soon. They actually moved out there and they live out there in Kona.
Really?
So spent some time.
Nice.
Shout out to Renee, who's out there. One of our former CTC, I think, president or vice presidents.
Yes.
And so we were out there with her and a bunch of other athletes that tend to come out every year. And yeah, it's a blast. So we'll have a lot of content coming soon to the Tri312 channel featuring Kona and some good tips for both racing and for spectating Kona as well.
So I don't know if you guys get this. I get this all the time, but whenever somebody new meets me and they hear that I do triathlon and I do or have done Ironman, the question always comes up, did you do the one in Hawaii? So for any of our viewers, any of our listeners that are new to the sports or getting into it, and they're not as familiar with sort of the history and what options there are out there in the world of triathlon, what is your response to those? And how do you help sort of give them the guidance as to understand sort of like where the variety is and to understand that the Ironman World Championship and what we see year to year from Kona is not the only Ironman, not the only triathlon that's out there?
It's a good question. I don't know
Yeah,
how
Joey?
to respond.
Um, I just tell them like, yes, Kona is the world championships, but now it's Kona and Nice are the world championships because they flip-flop every year now. Men doing Kona this year, which means next year the women will be in Kona, the men will be in Nice. But I tell everyone there are other Ironmans throughout the world. There are about 30 the world. And there are ways to get into Kona. One of the ways that Chris mentioned was legacy. If you've done 12 full Ironmans and finished 12 minimum, you can enter into the lottery. Is it a lottery?
The legacy program, it's no longer a lottery. It's kind of just a program instead. Once you've done 12, and the criteria have changed over the years, but it used to be as soon as you did 12, you could apply and then you're in a queue. And after a couple of years, you get your spot. I think now they have slightly different criteria. You have to have 10 consecutive years of racing Ironman events and 12. Don't quote me on the details. I need to look over it just to make sure they've changed it a few times. So I think you could have been doing half Ironmans in between fulls, but you need to do it like 10 consecutive years or so, or a certain amount. So, but it's not just because of the history of Kona. It's kind of where the original Ironman was. It was a debate between the local swimmers, cyclists, and runners as to who was the best athlete, and they combined, the Honolulu Marathon, the rough water swim, and I forget the name of the bike event. On Oahu, and then eventually that event moved to the Big Island as the race got bigger and harder to produce in Oahu. So the history of it, started as kind of the roots of triathlon, if you will. But then it became the World Championships that you had to qualify for. The Chicago Triathlon was actually a qualifier for Kona years ago.
Was it really?
Olympic distance,
Yes, back in
Chicago
the
Tri,
80s.
and qualify for Kona. But now you have to do a full Ironman to earn a qualification spot. And it's tough. You have to pretty much be a professional level athlete. Most people are training 20 hours a week just to try to qualify. The way I put it for runners is you need to be able to run a Boston Marathon qualifying time after swimming and biking all day long. So it is pretty tough.
Piece of cake.
Regardless of age group. Yeah. So not the easiest thing to do, but it's not just about who's the fastest, it's about rewarding endurance. So the legacy program is really about rewarding people who persevere and do a lot of endurance races.
Who are insane enough to do Ironman every single year. Yeah.
The athletes who we had who raced it, he's out in California now. He swims at a local master swim group. And one of the people in his master swim group was the former CEO of Ironman, Andrew Messick. And he was the one who created like the legacy program or turned it into the legacy program. And so he was actually racing in Kona too. So the two of them were going back and forth. And he thanked Andrew for creating the legacy program because that gave him an opportunity to go and do that race. So it's a cool program. There's other ways of getting in. I think there's a few sponsor spots and charity spots, but not very many. Most of it is qualifying or legacy.
Or roll down.
Yeah. Right. I have always assumed that if I ever was able to qualify for Kona, it just means that I aged up enough that I aged long enough and still did Ironman to the point where I was maybe the only 70-year-old qualifier for a race, and that might be my only way in. So, and speaking of retirement, that might be a long-term, still feeling long-term goal of getting there. Although I feel my wife like, well, now that we have all the time, we can spend more time together and not doing more Ironman.
Maybe as I get older, I'd be able to qualify on.
Yeah.
I think the oldest finisher was 84 years old.
Yeah.
And I think he did it under 15 hours or something like that. 70-year-olds were going under, I think, 11 hours. Like, it is insane. People in there.
Yeah, so maybe we shift back to being there with the Tri-3-1-2 crew.
So one of the things I will mention, one of my favorite things to do, several times I've been there now, is volunteer. And honestly, we have several of us now from our Tri-3-1-2 volunteering crew who actually go out there and volunteer. So we don't go there to race, we just go there to get inside the race from the inside and help them produce it, because they do need a lot of volunteers to produce that event. It's a blast. We were in there in transition as the pros were coming out and helping guide them to their gear bags. And, it's fun being literally up close.
See, I feel that would put way more pressure on me. That I've seen some of the videos that are on Instagram or that are posted elsewhere where, bless their heart, like volunteers just there to try to do their best and help out in any way that they can, especially the ones that are holding out water bottles for the pros. And you see mess after mess after mess. And you're like, oh God, was that my fault? So like, I feel like I would be so stressed just volunteering for, like, and especially if, like, as the pros are coming, I'm like, hey, can I volunteer like when the age groupers come through? Like, I feel like a little less pressure. Like, I feel like you need to have almost a profession in volunteering. Like, you've done that sort of specific volunteering before, whether it's for again, the water bottles on the bike or stripping wetsuit. Well, actually, there's probably not wetsuits out there, but something like that where there's a need to like grab bags quickly for them, so there's no disruption in transition or wherever they're at to make sure that they're fastest that day. I feel I'd be way too stressed.
It's a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun. I would encourage anyone to, besides racing it, make it a bucket list item to go to Kona to spectate and volunteer, at least do a couple hour shift somewhere. Because not a lot of sports where you can just come up and say, hey, I want to volunteer, and literally be, a foot away from the pros racing by and helping to make their day, a rewarding experience. And especially for the backpackers, that was actually the most rewarding, is helping those, final athletes. A lot of people got stung by jellyfish this year. There were a lot of jellyfish in the water, which there usually are a couple, but this year was a lot. So people coming out of the water are like, what do I do? And, we were guiding them into the tent where they could get vinegar and whatnot to help with the jellyfish stings. Yeah, it's fun if you can be part of that experience with somebody and make their day. So
nice. Okay.
That was COVID.
All right, rock on. Any other thoughts on like when you were able to see the pros, and like and we don't get that opportunity very often, whereas it was like when we had the chance to see the SUPERTRI event here in Chicago, it was amazing. But like they're flying by in this super sprint format where you don't get to see that much, and like before you're able to sort of like really see them run or bike or swim, like they're off to the next thing. Whereas maybe in your opportunity to be able to see the pros like out up close and in front, anything noticeable from your perspective, them versus us normies out here?
It's fun, seeing them do an Ironman in that type of climate is really tough. And so when we see them on the run, all the pros are pretty much struggling. Some of them still look pretty darn good, but
yeah,
it makes them more human. You get to see that they go through the same struggles, mental and physical, that we do. Especially this year, if you haven't watched the whole broadcast, it is pretty dramatic and exciting. All the changes in the lead that happened.
Yeah.
How things kind of unfolded the way they did. So it was fun. We were on a Leahy Drive as well. After we volunteered, we hung out and watched the pros on the run course. And just by watching their body language and their running form, it was funny when I recorded a quick video commenting on the top 10 athletes that came through. And I think it was obviously Patrick Lange and Rudy von Berg. I commented on both of them, like, these guys are looking really good. Like, cadence was high, good heel lift, their hips and their shoulders are very stable, not a lot of excessive movement. And you could tell right away, just, less than 6 miles into the run, who was probably going to do well. And sure enough, those two were the two that were, on the podium essentially, or caught up, and Magnus Ditlev as well. So it's fun. It was fun to be there and kind of see, them up close and be able to analyze their running form. And also to see that a lot of them are human just like us, and they will struggle and have bad days.
The first thing I saw when I saw things like updates on Instagram was Blumenfeld like losing his lunch multiple times on the bike, and I was like, oh, okay, well, that's happening right now. So all the more reason to be like nailing down your nutrition for race day. And if you're having a bad day, like it can really go south real quick.
And in particular, I felt bad for some like Lionel Sanders and Christian Blumenfeld. They both did not have great days.
Yeah.
And so we saw them towards the end when they were finishing, pretty far down the list. And in some cases, I think with Lionel, had a camera crew with him the whole time.
Yeah.
But Christian Blumenfeld, he was just coming down the street, no camera on him. He was struggling, just grinding it out. And nobody there. Like you wouldn't know that he was, an Olympic gold medalist.
Yeah.
He just looks like another guy doing it
out there. Yeah.
Out there on the road. But we noticed him and cheered him on, even though he was struggling at the end. Same thing with Lionel. I felt bad for him because it looked like he had a camera crew around him almost the whole time. So even when he was struggling on the worst moments, the final stretch, having that camera just incessantly right next to you probably is making it a little bit tougher for him.
I bet.
So I think that added pressure does not make it easy for those guys. But yeah, it was a fun experience.
Cool. Well, thanks for being there. Thanks for the information. We look forward to more of the videos that may be coming out on analysis on run form, analyzing run form from Coach Chris with the pros. And speaking of run form, I believe there was yet another marathon major this past weekend, the New York Marathon.
Decent weather. So no records were broken because it's New York. Abdi, I'm going to butcher this last name, Nagizi from the Netherlands won in 2:07:39. And this was his third time racing the course. So he was finally able to put it all together. And then on the women's side, Sheila Kirui, again, I'm going to butcher it. I'm so sorry, of Kenya won in 2:24:35. Helen Obiri, who won last year, was 15 seconds behind her. So with that, and the interesting part about our winner, she just started doing marathons 2 years ago. So it is possible to win a marathon. But speaking of New York was the last of the world majors for 2024. Well, 2025, instead of 6 world majors, we have just added a 7th. On August 31st, 2025, the 7th world major is Sydney. So just in case you want to go to Sydney, registration, I do not believe has opened as of yet.
Yeah, I think in December they'll have the lottery.
So start getting those coins together. If you're interested in potentially getting now a 7-star. So the 6-star program is still going to happen with, of course, the original 6 are Tokyo, London, Boston. Then we segue right into Sydney on the 31st. Roughly 4 weeks later, 3 weeks later is Berlin, 2 weeks later, Chicago, 3 weeks later, New York. So just in case you're looking at spending money, going to travel, get those miles up, there you go. So,
and it looks like Sydney is going to be the hilliest of all the world marathon majors. I may or may not have already booked my hotel.
Really?
I don't know.
Okay.
It's the case. We actually are potentially, I don't know if we officially have it out there yet, but we may be getting some charity spots to it. So if anyone wants to run with us in Sydney, it's going to be the week after the Chicago Triathlon next year. So I think that's Labor Day weekend.
Okay.
So it's a good excuse for extended weekend. You have an extra day of travel if you need to go around the other side of the world.
Yeah.
That should be exciting. And as part of that too, they announced that the following year, potentially, there's 2 additional World Marathon majors. The Cape Town Marathon may become a World Marathon major in 2026. And then in 2027, potentially the Shanghai Marathon will become the 8th and the 9th World Marathon majors. So they already said that the original 6 will continue to have that 6-star program.
Okay.
And then for the 7th and the 8th and the 9th, you start earning coins. And then they will do a 9-star medal. So there'll be an original 6 and then a 9 medal. So for those that want to do them, they'll have different, levels of challenges, if you will, to complete the 6 majors.
Now this would be
pretty set in stone. That would be 9 marathon majors.
Gotcha.
Pretty quick.
So this will be like Chicago, where there will be a lottery to register, not a qualifier. That is Boston, correct?
Usually all the marathon majors have a time qualifier and a lottery.
And a lottery, okay.
Boston is generally known as the major that has the time qualifying standard, because that's the way most athletes get into Boston. But New York and Chicago, London, others, they all have a time qualifier as well, but it is actually more competitive than Boston. So it's only a very small minority of runners that get into the World Marathon majors off of time qualifiers.
Okay.
But yeah, Sydney, they had a webinar for all the charities recently, and so we got a lot of the details about how the registration is going to work and all that. I don't think we've seen the qualifying standards, so they might have a time qualifier as well for Sydney, so you can Sydney qualify off of time as well.
And so for those of us who are in Chicago, the world of Flatlanders, if you're looking at doing Sydney, or you by some chance get into Sydney, you might want to consider some hill training, maybe up in Wisconsin, maybe taking a weekend trip to Michigan, or a weekend trip to some places in Indiana to do some hill training.
Or the March Madness half marathon
in Cary, Illinois,
which is a popular local hilly half marathon that is definitely one of the hilliest places in all of Illinois. Want to run a really hilly race. It's also one of the most competitive ones because that usually lines up with people who are training for the Boston Marathon. They like to do that race in March. So yeah, Cary March Madness, the hill starters.
That will be March. That race will be, I believe, March 16th. Registration is going to open around New Year's Eve. So get that on your calendar now.
Yeah, that event sells out pretty quick.
Very quickly.
Okay. And speaking of sort of majors, I know that with our new partners with SUPERTRI, with the Chicago Triathlon and their creation of the triathlon majors, Chicago being one of them. I hear that registration is opening up fairly soon. And any updates on the SUPERTRI Chicago Tri-End? I know they just finished their last professional events this past weekend, and we now have team winners, individual winners, all that fun stuff. So any news and updates on the SUPERTRI side?
Yeah. Championship, the final race of the series in Neom, out in the Middle East, and it was in a desert environment, very hot and very windy. Actually, it was choppy on the swim, but the typical SUPERTRI format, which is 3 back-to-back nonstop triathlons, draft legal racing. There were a couple bike crashes, some pretty exciting TV, and it was also fun to see some of the pros. One in the men's race, one in the women's race. The pros ran with their helmets on, which you see oftentimes at the Chicago Tri. Some beginners who forget they have their bike helmet on. In this case, I think one of the females had accidentally had the helmet strap get stuck on her hair when she was trying to transition, and so she just decided to run with her helmet on. And then for one of the males, I think it was Hayden Wild, he had trouble unclipping his helmet, and so he just started running with it and then eventually got it off. So it was fun to watch. Definitely go check it out. You can, I think, find the recordings on the YouTube channel. They're about an hour long, so good video content to watch.
Or follow them on Instagram. You get really good updates on like where everybody's at, and then they're like, "What's going on?" People are running in their bike helmets. So yeah,
And and I haven't seen officially yet if we've announced if we'll have the same full SUPERTRI series next year, but we will definitely have it in Chicago. So that's been confirmed. And I don't think it's official yet, but we're actually looking at having the SUPERTRI Chicago event potentially take place on Saturday instead of Sunday. So when you're doing the bike drop off and the expo on Saturday, so that way more people can hopefully watch it. So it'll be exciting to see it come back to Chicago again.
I feel that will be helpful for a lot of spectators, be a little bit more spectator friendly, not so that's not coinciding with as athletes who probably wanted to watch the event aren't also having to go get their bike out of transition immediately after the race. So I'm sure hopefully that will be beneficial for them to get our SUPERTRI friends to get more spectators and more of our actual triathletes here in Chicago to watch, and for our triathletes to be in a position where they feel like they actually not stress or have to rush to do other things while that event is going on. So.
And so as part of that, the SUPERTRI, we just opened up the registration for the Chicago Triathlon. So it is officially open now. Get the lowest pricing of the year if you register now. And if you missed the early registration, which was like for a short period right after the race, this is the official first tier pricing essentially. And so now is the time to get signed up. If you're a club or a member of a club, there's a club program where you can get an additional 10% off, which really brings the price down. So definitely encourage your friends and family and club teams to get signed up. There's also a charity program, and there's also a corporate challenge program, which is a really cool program if you want to race in an early wave and have your own kind of VIP bike rack in transition. And we're potentially going to have some changes to the relays as well. But pretty much everything else will be the same as in years past. One exciting new thing that we're working on is to create a tri-state challenge between the three kind of local state championship races. So last year, Leon's Tri in Indiana and the Pleasant Prairie Tri in Wisconsin and the Chicago Tri in Illinois were 3 USAT state championships for each state. And especially because USAT just announced this past week that the national championships, the USAT Sprint and Olympic Distance Nationals,
will be coming back to Milwaukee. Yeah.
And at the state championships, you can higher percentage of the finishers qualify for the national championships. So if you want to race in the national championships, it's very doable by racing one of these state championship events to qualify for the nationals. So it'll be at least be in Milwaukee for the next 2 years for sure.
Okay.
And so what we're creating is a state championship or a tri-state challenge where just based on finishing, if you do all 3 states, we'll have a special prize at the Chicago Tri. So we're working on the details of that. Hopefully we'll be able to announce that officially as part of the Chicago Triathlon. But yeah, stay tuned for that. And Leon's Tri, he's going to have his race is going to have a broadcast of this year's event on Veterans Day. So next Monday, stay tuned. You can watch Leon's Tri on TV if you've never seen that race. So be sure to check that out and stay tuned.
Maybe you'll see some random interviewer walking around the course.
And if you are, a coach, a club, kind of a community leader, I am the community manager for the Chicago Tri here in Chicago, and we're going to have a event next month to kind of get all the clubs and charities and teams together, kind of give a lot of these updates on new things for next year. So if you're interested, reach out to us or just shoot me an email, chris.maven@SUPERTRI.
Where is that going to be? Is that going to be a virtual event or is that going to be in person?
We'll do a virtual, and then we're hoping to have an in-person event as well. That may be in January. We're trying to work on locations and details of that. So kind of like a kickoff party for the new year. So stay tuned. December and January is kind of that key time to make those decisions about what races you're doing. If you want to do races with friends, it's a good time to nudge them and influence them to sign up for the same races that you're signing up for. So we're hoping to create some fun community gatherings to get everybody together. So yeah, if you want to be a part of that, feel free to reach out and just stay tuned.
Okay. And speaking of races to maybe get excited for or get people to sign up for and get excited about, we just got notification emails that Ironman Rockford 70.3, our first official Ironman race in the state of Illinois, is 70% sold out. So if you are interested, if you know anybody else that's interested, club members, friends, family, somebody that you're convinced to do it for their umpteenth birthday, get them interested, get them signed up. We're at 70% right now.
Yeah, and this Saturday we're going out to do a run course recon on the Rock River. So if you're in the area, want to join in, I think the run will start at 10 a.m. and double check the details on it, but a 1 loop or 2 loop run of the half Ironman, the Rockford 70.3 run course to check it out with a little after party probably, and there's a little warm up mobility workout beforehand as well. So should be a fun event. I think there's some sponsor raffle prizes announced as part of that as well. So definitely check that out. And yeah, maybe we'll do some video of the run course of Rockford this weekend. So another upcoming Tri 312 video though.
That's right. Okay. Well, thanks a lot, everybody. That was our Tri 312 endurance sports news for the month of November. I'm sure there's more coming, and we will try our best to get that information out to you as it comes, as well as for our future updates coming up next month in December, going into the holidays and into the new year. But for me, Coach Brian, Coach Chris, Coach Joy, thank you guys for joining us. We are trying to get to 312 subscribers with our Tri 312 network on YouTube. So if you are appreciating the information, appreciating the news, the information that we're providing or doing our best to provide, please feel free to subscribe. It's the best way to support us and be able to help us grow this network and get more information and get more community growing here in the greater Chicagoland community with and through Tri 312. So any other parting thoughts, you guys?
Well, I think I'd be curious to know what folks would like to hear more about in terms of races for next year.
Yeah.
So maybe if people watch this on our YouTube channel, like and subscribe and comment down below to let us know what races, one, you're doing next year, and two, what races you'd like us to cover next year. And we're going to try to do some more in-person race coverage next year. So want to hear from the masses as to what races folks would like to see us cover.
Yeah. All right. Thanks a lot, everyone. And we'll be talking again here soon, talking about indoor triathlons and off-season training.